This video is sponsored by, well, you. Thank you very much for watching. Do leave a like if you found this enjoyable. Minecraft. Delighting gamers with its creativity officially since 2011. Now I know what you're thinking, you've read the title of this thing. Theology in Minecraft? Well, they're all rubbish. But well, if one Mac can look too deeply into a game about making stuff with blocks, well, what's one more? This is going to be a bit of a thinking exercise today, so do grab yourself a drink, get comfortable, as we ask the question we're all here for. What is the theology of the Minecraft villagers? Now, the thing that sparked the idea for this episode came to me while I was wandering around looking for potatoes in game. These can often spawn in villages that crop up across the various biomes. Potatoes are an easy source of food, so I tend to seek them out as soon as I can, as they can be quite rare otherwise. Now, while I was there, I noticed a villager in slightly different garb than usual, so I decided to trade with him to see what he offered me. Now, I know that some villagers hold professions like librarians or blacksmiths, and they sell things that are appropriate to a craft, like iron ingots or, books or whatever. But this guy, he was called a cleric. At this point, my theologian brain kicked in. Clerics denote religion, and not only that, but one that's been around for quite a while. Possibly some sort of organised religion, like one of the big ones that we've got around today. And since a cleric is similar to a priest, not a shaman type deal, I started to think about that, and started to look for in-game clues that tell me what sort of religion that these guys had. Now, I hope you've got your drink and you're quite comfy, because we're about to set off on a journey that's probably about as long as your last game on Minecraft. So, let's set up some parameters to start off with. All the stuff I'm going to be discussing today is stuff that I've come across in-game, and now this was all done before 2021's Caves and Cliffs update, although from what I gather this update isn't going to alter my theories very much. I'm not going to be using any external guides or lore books, although I will admit that I did have to dip into the Minecraft wiki occasionally just to make sure I was using the right names or, make sure I've got the right blocks or whatever, and I wanted to present this as best as I could as an outsider looking in. I also am going to disregard anything that game theory said about this and just do it as my observations. So with all that said, let's stop mucking about, let's dive into my findings, build up a snapshot of what's going on, and try and answer the question. Let's go! Anyone that has played on survival mode will know this. The night is dark and full of terrors, all of which want to present you with a game over screen. The creatures that spawn in at night are overwhelmingly hostile and somehow magical. Zombies and skeletons will roam the land, attacking anything wandering around at night. But once the sun comes up, all these creatures will either despawn or will catch on fire, and they're only protected if they happen to be in the shade or covered somehow. Direct sunlight will destroy them. Some beasties can actually survive the sunlight, but given enough of it, they will eventually despawn. These creatures are all associated with darkness. When you're exploring caves, they can be found lurking in the shadows, and monster spawning devices can be found in all these forgotten corners under the earth. The night time, therefore, would be seen as the realm of the undead, the magical, their only weakness being the light placing torches that stop them from spawning. In fact, when you encase a spawner in light, it stops the monster generation. By contrast, daytime is a time of peace. Trees and plants will grow, creatures roaming around are generally not hostile to the player or to villagers, with the exception of those that are underwater. Nothing is coming to destroy that little house that you spent far too long on making, generally, and the creatures all roaming around will drop something or can be harvested to make something new or beneficial. Of course, when the sun finally goes down, the peaceful creatures will start to disappear, and villagers will seek out their homes to hide from the horrors. Villagers as well are a peaceful lot. They don't arm themselves for defence, and they mostly rely on the sturdiness of their structures to keep them safe. Going a bit deeper though, there are villagers that do thrive at night. Now these are the Illagers who roam the lands seeking trouble. There are also witches, and both Illagers and witches have buildings that are associated with them. The Illagers can be found in large mansions in remote places and in large guard towers, while witches can be found cavorting with the creatures of the night in caves, wandering around at night, or living in huts in swamps. Both groups, it seems, are not targets for the other creatures that roam the night, and both are fond of magic, while villagers are not so much, as apart from the cleric they have all some sort of practical trade. So, how does this all translate into theology? So the first observation I had is that the good folk of Minecraft are most likely polytheistic, with either a daytime or a sun god, and a nighttime or a moon god. The daytime god would represent peace, prosperity, creation, and life, whereas the nighttime god would represent death, chaos, and destruction. It could be that the difference between the villagers and the Illagers is simply which god they worship. This dual pantheon even seems to be backed up by the poem that is presented to the player after defeating the Ender Dragon, as it portrays two beings who have evidently been watching your actions the whole time and they're discussing you. But this is probably just one layer of the onion. Let's talk about magic for a bit. It is easy to claim that the world of Minecraft is a magical one, as both the player and their various antagonists can use it. The player cannot cast spells or wards, but they can imbue objects and substances with fantastical properties. These take the form of potions and enchantments. Their enemies can also do the same, but some of them can indeed tap into some unseen force and throw harmful energies, but this is rare and only specific enemies can do so. Minecraft leans towards a hard magic system in that there are rules and regulations that have to be followed. There's no incantations, it seems, and some of the effects are random. Both sides of the divide use enchantments and potions, and it would be fair to assume that magic is kind of a neutral force, a tool that's used to further the goals of the day or the night gods. Villagers will often sell or store beneficial enchantments or potions, and Illagers will cast debuffs and throw harmful potions, in line with our theorised deities. At this point, I did wonder if there was in fact a third deity floating around who represents water and magic, some sort of neutral deity, or perhaps there might be a large pantheon akin to the Romans or Greeks, with beings that represent various biomes or realms or concepts. But I'll be honest with you here, I had a tough time writing this video. The amount of rabbit holes I fell down got pretty intense. Such is the nature of a game with no canon story or lore. At least not in game. Although, because of the end poem, I'm going to stick with the twin gods theory rather than, say, a trinity or a pantheon. So it's about time I dropped my big game theory MatPat revelation that punted me down the first of the thoughts that led to the formation of my theories regarding Minecraft, and it all started with that cleric from the beginning. Clerics only spawn when a religious building is present in a village, and most I've come across look like tiny medieval churches that you'll find dotted around Europe and beyond, and while they might look different, they've all got one thing in common. Every single one of them contains a significant piece of kit. A brewing stand. And here is that first rabbit hole I fell down. There is only one way that you can make a brewing stand, and that is to use a blaze rod, from a fiery beastie called a blaze. But blazes do not exist in the world of the villagers. They live in the flaming dimension known as the Nether. This tells us that the villagers are not only aware of this alternate world, but have possibly ventured into it to hunt its denizens, or at the very least have tales and fables of those ancient, or recent, heroes who faced those great challenges when they went to go and get them for the clerics. And it would not be too far of a leap for them to have heard of another realm, a mysterious dark place known as the End. So here is another theory. With the two deities and the knowledge that the villagers are aware of these other physical alternate worlds, it is possible that both the villagers and Illagers have associated these worlds with their deities. The Nether, with its glowstones, blazes, heat and lava, might have been associated with the day god. The End, according to in-game files, is a cold biome. It's dangerous, contains a destructive dragon. There's no light, no sky, and nothing but endless darkness, cold stone and occasional abandoned structures, with creatures that are only hostile if you disturb them. A realm of endless night. It's the perfect place to associate with the god of darkness. If we take this a bit further, you can maybe see how the denizens of these realms may be their god's representatives. The piglins wear shiny gold, and will attack those who disrupt the Nether. The Endermen, who rearrange blocks and dwell in dark places, like the night time, and they roam around and they're only aggressive when their calm demeanour is disturbed by looking them in the eyes. Which, let's be honest, if a stranger looks you in the eyes at night time, that would make your fight or flight response flare up anyway. But if we are to accept this dual pantheon and theory, we must concede that both gods are kind of two sides of the same coin, not so much in conflict, as maintaining a balance between order and chaos and how they intertwine. After all, to get to the end, you need to get to the Nether, and the Nether is a reliable place to find the denizens of the End moving blocks around, and both are found in the middle ground of the overworld. This is starting to get us a wee bit off track, so let's ponder what form faith might take in the everyday life of villagers. Well, with the villagers, we see it in the many professions that they have, all of which are creative in some manner, or involve the things we find in the day. Butchers, stonemasons, librarians. They all make something, and clerics, well, they create beneficial potions and things. So it's possible that the villager life revolves around hard work to create. It would be focused on the work of the individual as an act of collective creation, since the villagers all live in their own houses with their own buildings for specific jobs, honouring their god with their daily toil and labour, using magic only to enhance their creations. They often surround their houses with torches, a constant reminder of the light their god stands for, and sleep during the night. Illagers, on the other hand, are not averse to using magic to avoid hard work and effort. The night is calm, but it is dangerous, and these chaps reflect this. They are less creative, and they choose instead to raid villages for what they need, rather than make it themselves. They will create curses to debilitate their enemies, and evidently have devised a means to be ignored by monsters, rather than using light to repel them. They all share the same grey skin tone, which could be some sort of enchantment to achieve this monster immunity, or maybe they're tribal markings, or perhaps they're undead as well. Illagers always live in a commune such as a big mansion or a tower, and without getting into politics, they might subscribe to some sort of thing that says that the individual isn't as important as the group as a whole. The raiding parties that we see may actually be their act of worship for their god, which means sneaking out and causing destruction in its name. They even carry banners around, which might actually portray their nighttime patron, showing that both sides might have given them both a human or, Minecraftian visage. So, we've got part of the picture, but what of the matters of the soul? Now, there's not enough in-game to get too deep into things, such as what their view of the afterlife might be, but the block known as soul sand does give an indication that the soul possibly either returns to the earth or returns as to a universal flow of soul energy. This could mean that Minecraftian's afterlife is one of reincarnation, or that the soul is like an energy that merely goes from one place to another, much as the properties of an enchantment can be passed from a book to a sword. Who knows, maybe the XP that we're collecting as a player is merely this universal soul energy that flows through the three realms, transferred through the acts of creation or destruction. This might explain why you lose XP orbs when you're defeated. Although how the player character fits into all this, well, that's another discussion altogether, isn't it? So without making this video about 1 million hours long, I think we've got enough to finally go on to answer that final initial question. What is the theology of the Minecraft villagers? Let's have a quick recap. So we've got two deities, one of creation, one of destruction, worshipped by the many tribes of Minecraftians, portrayed as day and night. Those following the day will work hard to create and foster peace. Those following the night are warlike who steal and spread destruction. No doubt there's animosity between the tribes as they represent the opposite sides of their patron gods. Both tribes will use magic and no doubt see their activities as hoping to create the balance between destruction and creation. All the fantastical creatures and knowledge of the other worlds and their residents, they may believe on death that they will reincarnate as either a pigman or an enderman, or that their soul merely returns back to the energy from whence it came to be used again once more. There are of course about 1,000 more questions that I could have asked, such as the significance of the abandoned temples that you can find out there, especially the ones that are buried underwater, and why they are guarded by what appear to be magically infused golems. What is the deal with the Ender Dragon and the Wither? Who did those shipwrecks belong to? Do the Minecraftians have a creation story, or do they have one about the end of days? But for now, I think that's enough. So I'm off to finish making a pub out of diorite and dark oak, but I want to know what you think. Do you think my observations are any good? Feel free to keep the discussion going down in the comments, and maybe I should do a part 2 of this when I've delved into more of the lore and got into some of the external sources and maybe deepen this theory of mine. Anyway, if you like this, do leave a like, and until next time, go grab yourself a drink and keep crafting questions.